All right. Good morning and good evening to you, Mohan. Welcome to Parasocial, the people behind the protocols. I'm excited to have you on today. And maybe let's kick off with a little bit about your role at DCharge and who you are and what you do.
Well, thanks, Aditi, for having me and Charge on this podcast. Really happy to be here, especially since we've been working together for a long time. Feels great to share about the journey on this. Yeah, no, I'm the founder and CEO for DCharge. So we started DCharge way back. This was 20 mid 2025. We were looking at something that has real world value. We've been working. I have in the past worked with logistics companies. So I was building a solution that helped save costs for logistics companies, last mile delivery companies. I built a version of Uber, but for three wheelers, which was very famous where I built it. And during that time, I always wanted to, for the sake of cost saving, I always wanted to bring electric into the picture because the cost per mile is significantly lower when compared to petrol or diesel engines for that matter. But at that point of time, this was back in 2015, the market was not ready for electric and it was not mature. But I always thought this is the game changer. And after my previous company, then I thought, okay, what do I want to do next? It actually happened by chance because I went to buy an electric vehicle, me and my wife. We were always almost about to buy it. And then my wife happens to ask the salesperson, saying that, where do I charge this? And then he goes, yeah, you can charge anywhere you want. And she goes, what do you mean you can charge anywhere you want? Then he goes, yeah, you have to find it on Google and then you have to go and you have to charge there. Then she goes, how many chargers do you have? This was back in late 23,
Wow.
by the way.
Yeah, the liquidity of chargers was not high at that point.
Nothing. So we went on Google and we said, yeah, okay. And then there was nothing, no chargers around. So we had to go maybe drive 30-35 minutes for a charger. And we don't know if it was working or not. Then I realized that, okay, this is the problem. But I was looking at the market, right? And he was telling us that they had insane sales. They did the best month and every month is beating the previous month. I thought, where are all these people charging? So that's when I thought, okay, this is the problem that needs to be solved. Then I went and spoke to the companies that I used to work with in the logistics. And I asked them saying that, hey, what is the biggest barrier for you guys? Then by that time, they're already thinking of moving to electric because electric two wheelers have become much cheaper now. Like Yulu is using it and last mile delivery companies are using it. And then they go, the only thing is charging stations. We don't have charging stations because once they're out there, they're always worried that they'll be out of charge and they have to push the vehicle back. So range anxiety was a big problem. So I said, okay, look, let me set up charges for you. Will you use it? They were like, I will. They just opened up a red carpet for us saying, look, what is it that you want? What is the capital that you want? So whatever money I was going to use to buy the car, I started building charges. And that's how this whole story started. And
Oh,
here we are, basically.
amazing. And I mean, one interesting thing about Decharge that we've always valued when working with you guys is you guys have always been focused on this problem and always been focused on Solana. You were talking about the most popular device that anyone can buy and it's compatible with also other chargers as well. So you were kind of talking
Yeah.
about the
Yeah. So
various
Beast is by far
devices that
the
you have.
most successful. Yeah. So Beast is by far the most successful device that we have. But now we are moving into fast chargers and battery swaps and expanding the ecosystem to put the entire range of electric that is there. So yeah, that's where we are.
And then I think there was a question on how much people can earn or what the economics of the network look like right now, if you could touch on that.
Yeah, great. So the right now we have different options for people. So we have a lot of usage. We have some really interesting partnerships that we have with travel operators, with fleet operators, with last mile delivery companies. So wherever we deploy, we make sure that there is constant usage. So the users make a big chunk of the revenue share depending on where they are. Plus they earn tokens on top of that for being a part of the network and keeping the network alive. So far we have for people who purchased our mini devices, we who paid I think $99 for it, we've already paid back around close to $60 within the last 7 months, and they've already made more than 70% back. And then the lifetime of it is forever, so they just end up making a lot of money. But for the fast chargers, there's a very good margin because we end up charging the users at around market prices around 24 to 25 cents per kilowatt per unit of electricity. And we pay the electricity cost for the end user, plus we pay about 3 to 4 cents on top of that. So they end up making a very decent margin. Sorry, I think there's a lag. The average ROI for the device, if it's a smaller device, is about 8 to 10 months. For the larger device, around 16 months, and the lifetime is 5 years. So that's the metric.
Right. That makes complete sense. And it sounds like the network is only growing with time. That's hopefully exciting for your users as well. One thing that we've noticed is a lot of deepen projects target the US or Europe right out of the gate, but you started in a market in India where two-wheelers really dominate and the charger to EV ratio is something like, 1:15. You guys have also done a lot of amazing content of the chargers around tells in Bangalore, and it's clear that like the chargers in that area are just not sufficient. And so was that a deliberate strategy? And also, like, what have you learned building in the Asia and Indian market that most kind of Western deep in teams might miss?
So very, very good question actually. See, there are two different sides of the coin. The Western markets are more regulated, they're heavy on compliance, and they're very high ticket. So the ROI is much faster and the price per transaction is much higher in the Western markets. But on the opposite side, markets like the Asian markets, whether you take, for example, India or Vietnam or Thailand, wherever we are doing well. It's a fast growing market and it's a high volume market. In countries, the reason we started in India was it's very easy to get started because it's home ground. We could run a lot of experiments and we could work with a lot of partners. Like hyperlocal deliveries is probably something that is mastered already in a country like India, which is not, it is yet to be mastered in the Western countries. Like, for example, we have 5 minute grocery deliveries, right? So we have the Swiggies and the Zeptos and Blinkits where I can order anything that I want and it comes here in 5 minutes. Now, to sustain an ecosystem like this, and there are a lot of riders, right? Tens of thousands of riders around the country whose job is to do these hyperlocal deliveries. And there are tens and thousands of vehicles here and there is no infrastructure. So the lowest hanging fruit was to get started here because it was an immediate problem that need to be solved for these companies because they needed this connectivity. The grid, we had to build the grid here. And it was very profitable for us to do it because they were relying on us in a sense. So that's how we got started. And we could really quickly validate this whole ecosystem where most of the drivers also became hosts. So they saw that it was profitable and they started hosting the charger and getting the driver friends around it. So though we started in India, we have the same outlook for the Western markets, and it's a completely different ball game again because again it's a high ticket installation. So I could get started with an installation in India for a fast charger in $10,000, but the same thing in US would cost me upwards 70 because it is a lot of compliance. But the ROI is
Right.
also faster because the spending power for people in the West is much higher. So each market has its own advantages, but we were very careful in creating we were actually tactical about the strategy where we balance Asia and US in a way where we are addressing the needs of both markets while absorbing as much as we could and learning as much as we could. First 18 months, that was our intent, to just go in and see how deep the waters are and master the whole process, right? Because in I'll tell you, in we did some insane things. Like even in Indian markets, in US markets, we reinvented the supply chain from the ground up to be able to do the distribution because we were looking at where the costs could be cut down to optimize the deployment. So we even went so deep as to work with like copper suppliers to see if we can acquire copper in bulk by bringing all our aggregators together so that they give us a bigger discount and they get it cheaper and we get it cheaper. We reinvented that whole process. So yeah, we're
You went
happy.
kind of deeper than just the EV infrastructure, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, we went. We're probably experts in that field. We've done like work with manufacturers. We have also become manufacturers, but we've gone so deep into this rabbit hole that we went right to the procurement and we started redefining the supply chain. And we were able to cut down the cost of the charger by 45%. So
Wow. My God,
yeah,
that's insane.
yeah, and most of our partners now are still using the same supply chain, and their margins have increased just by working with us.
Just by working with DeCharge. Wow. That's
Yeah.
incredible. I mean, one thing that's always impressed us about your team is you guys are so game to go deeper into the process. I think the last time we hung out was in SF, actually, when you were starting the US expansion. So I'm curious, I know the initial goal was something like 1,000 hosts across 10. What does that success look like for you guys in the US? And I mean, you talked a lot about the regulatory market being very different in the US, but like, how does that compare and how does that change how you've navigated this market in the
So
West?
we were able to crack some what we learned through our exposure to the US market is a you need to have fantastic and really reliable partners there. That was the first entry because even if let's say we have $1 million budget for US, we would only end up having 8 to 10 chargers there, given the cost of it, right? So we wanted to go deeper. We had to reinvent. We had to be very strategic about what we wanted to achieve in that market. So first things we did is build fantastic partnerships. So one of our partners is Wallbox. Wallbox happens to have more than 1 million chargers across the country, and they're a listed company. So we cracked a deal with Wallbox where we are working towards deploying the next bunch of chargers with them through a partnership, and now that's solidified us as. So it takes a lot to bring a partnership like that and scale it. We have so much alignment. That's one. Second thing we did, and we are very close to announcing that, is we cracked a very big deal with a chain of supermarkets and malls in the US, and it is in Prime, Maryland, DC. And, they, after looking at our model, we've passed now the engineering design process and waiting for permits and as a compliance thing. But looking at what we did, they've opened up all of their 14 other locations to us across the US, and
Wow.
that is
Insane.
a big win. It's a big win for us. Now we're working
Yeah, I
towards
don't think
these.
I'd heard, I don't think I'd known of that because I think the last time we had hung out, you were still kind of formalizing what these partnerships could look like and still navigating those orgs. So it's insane that you've cracked, I mean, a supermarket chain. That's massive.
Yeah. It's a mall and supermarket chain. It took us a very long time to do it, but no, we're very aligned, and they love the model because we bring this whole decentralization game that they've never seen before, and they get a part of the revenues back because other charges. So these malls also had history of hosting other charges, but they would only pay like a small rent, and that's it. But the model that we opened up makes them a stakeholder and makes revenue to that location, so they nobody else could beat it. So yeah, and we it was competitive. So there were other top companies along with us who were bidding for the same location. Somehow we won. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that is part of what I'm curious about because I don't know much about EV charging infrastructure. So, and I think a lot of our listeners don't as well. But you have ChargePoint and superchargers and kind of these incumbents. Is the sell for why something like a decharge with these big kind of supermarkets or entities that have brick and mortar space is the sell that they are getting a cut of the revenue, or like what are kind of the points in which people understand like why going for a community owned model will wins against some of these other incumbents?
So the biggest advantage that this provides is they become a host, right? So in the decentralized model, the host brings the location and the host has the most advantage while the protocol makes only a part of the revenue. And the decentralization aspect of it, because I don't know if you know about it, but over the last few months, we also ran these DeFi pools, liquidity pools, where we had
Yeah, I was
communities
going to ask you
participate
some
with.
questions about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have the community who's interested putting in money, who have equity in this, and then Decharge has a protocol fee, but the chunk of it goes back to the host, and the host is also providing a lot of foot traffic, a lot of car traffic, constant car traffic, where the utilization is off the roof. So I won't take names, but the chargers we're replacing whose contact ended, they were making about $500,000 a year in one location with 3 chargers there. So it is that busy. There is a 9 million footfall a year in that mall. So it's great for everyone, right? The mall makes money because they are providing the location, they're providing the space that they have, they're providing the ecosystem, like even the cars who are users. And then the community is putting their money to build the infrastructure. And this does not concern the mall management because they're insulated from this expense. But they get revenues out of it for providing the ecosystem, which is what
For
they
having the foot
thrive.
traffic. Yeah.
Yeah, and the people who are putting the money, and we are good because we are managing the whole thing. We're setting up the charger, we're maintaining it, we're doing the partnerships. All that is good. Protocol makes the fee, which again goes back into the points or tokens later. That's the cycle. But whoever put money in here gets a fixed revenue out of this, and they make their money back plus more over a period of time. So everybody wins. This is the model where everybody wins versus one company which says, okay, I'm going to put in $1 million to put my chargers. I'll pay a rent, and that is an outdated model right now because that kind of companies have to wait for 7 years, and you don't know what is going to happen in 7 years, right? Look at what's happening now. The war, the situation, the market's
Right.
completely flipped. So your 6 years of ROI has suddenly become 7.5, maybe because of whatever reasons, right? And if there's a lockdown, it'll go further. So
Right.
yeah, this insulates everybody.
Got it. Got it. So it's kind of it's a more effective way of just guaranteeing higher ROI in places with higher foot traffic, which you're kind of
Not just higher
aligning
foot
on via
traffic.
partnerships.
Yeah, not just higher foot traffic, but any location. Because if there is no foot traffic, we take the marketing aspect to bring foot traffic there. We do that marketing because our community also drives those references to bring traffic to that location. That is the whole point of this. It's community owned, so community just goes there. They're incentivized to go there. They tell their friends, family. We've seen that effect all over.
Very cool. Huh. And you glazed over this, but I wanted to understand this a little bit more. So you guys are setting up the chargers yourselves.
We are, but now we've kind of
Wow.
experimenting with a model where we moved out by bringing third parties to do it because we realized that it's very optimized and very cost effective. Like in areas, let's say for example, if we are doing it in let's say in SF is probably okay because we can be there. But let's say we're doing somewhere in Louisiana or Ohio, we might not know the location, we might not be experts there, but we have also signed partnerships with national players who have who have done this thousands of times with companies like ChargePoint or Tesla, and they know this inside out. And we have figured out like an insane fixed price across the country wherever they are, and they just go and do it. They get a fixed price. It's factored into the cost of the charger, and it's
Got it.
perfect. That's
It's
how
just
we
baked
scale.
in. That makes
Because
sense.
if we
That's
have,
that's probably how you scale. Yeah, I was gonna ask because
yeah,
if you guys were, I knew in the beginning you were kind of flying around and setting up the chargers, but it sounds like you have a model now to
yeah,
go through that. That's awesome.
we did it initially to understand the pitfalls of it, what is involved, what are the challenges, where would be the costs, etc. So that when we make a partnership with somebody, we just don't want to be taken for a ride. But now we know everything about it. So when we talk to partners, we know exactly what something costs, so we can negotiate well on that. So we did all the hard work first to just learn everything that, like I said earlier, we absorbed the same amount of knowledge about this. But now it's good. Now it's good.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so cool to see. I mean, for context, like we've been, you know this, but for the listeners, like we've been chatting for like 3 years at this point. So just very cool to hear how full circle the story has come. Um, one item that I'm curious about is you mentioned the addition of the pools. You have people that are funding charger hubs with stable and earning yield. Talk to me a little bit about why wallets are so important in that, and maybe you can touch on the Scout app a little bit as well.
Yeah. Okay. So let me find a good starting point for something like this to make it easier. Let's start with the wallets. See, the we have two options, right? One, people can pay with stable, and two, people can just pay through the regular wallets, right? Now, it's not programmatic for us. Okay, receiving money is not a problem because it's a transaction. It's a wallet transaction. You can do it in a way. But how do we pay? Paying them back is a very difficult thing because when we have to process, let's say, 2,000 users, we can't automate. There's a high risk involved when we do manual transactions to wallets, right? You have to be double checking every wallet address all the time, and then coordinating with the user to see if they have received it, make sure that they're responding to emails saying that, hey, is this the wallet address, just so that we don't have something wrong and it doesn't go into like you know la la land. But having a wallet was so important because we can make it programmatic. We knew that a user's identity, we don't know the user, but we know that this wallet is tied to the user and the money came through that and the money can go back into that, so that there's a lot of credibility on that, and there's also a lot of trust in that layer. So these are the two important things that made us go with, of course, para, of course, because that is where this whole thing flipped for us, because users could link their email to it and that's all it is. And then we know that we're sending money to an email which is verified by the user and they're getting their money, and it's not going to some random person or some random
Random
non-existing
text.
account
Yeah.
that cannot be recovered, right? So it's a
Yeah.
peace of mind. So
Yeah.
we prefer wallets any day.
Got it. Got it. And, on the motivation for some of the deepen stuff that you guys have added. That um, is that an attempt at improving some of the margins for these hosts, or what was the impetus around that? Because I think that's new, right? That's landed in the last like year or so.
Yeah. So we were probably one of the first few people who kind of really pushed the deep in Fi narrative forward,
Totally. Yeah.
because the deepin kind of went through cycles, right? Usually deepin is right now we're kind of in deepin 1.0. That is what we call ourselves. We are deepin 1.0 was very cost centric, so you'd spend a lot of money and assume that you would make that money back at some point of time because people would use the services. So you build the infra first and then wait for a buy. But deepin 0 is the other way around. We have demand. Deep in 1 was all supply, wait for demand, and then sell at some point. So you hold tokens. Deep in 2 is the flip of it. We know there's existing demand and we are building supply to address the existing demand. So we know that people will are ready to buy even before we address it, right? So that's where that is our approach. Because even before we even think about in crypto, especially in this, there's very few use cases that have real world value. And I think something like EV charging is actually a very good example of how deep in finance and real world assets and real world life can bring together to actually showcase a use case for crypto that for greater good. So this could be a very good use case for bringing the next few million users on, for billion users onto crypto, because this is genuinely a instrument. Because we had some very interesting conversations in US also, where we are very prime place to go into the no action task force of the SEC, because it's helping people transact and it's creating income for people, it's creating revenues for people, and it is tied to a
Like a
real asset.
two-sided marketplace.
It's like
Yeah.
it has all of those good things, right? So the reason why we wanted to do deep in first, we pushed deep into to a point, and it was autopilot. Then we were thinking, how can we make this bigger and better? Now in crypto at that point of time, everybody were into yields, and they were thinking of, there were people who would not understand charging as a business, but they understand investing and yield and APYs because they would trade a lot. To bring an opportunity for people who don't really know the business while we do the business, but make sure that they get their money out of it and win out of it, to participate in this ecosystem. But that also opened up a door for us that created an opportunity to deploy another, like takes the velocity at which we go, because now we have a set of people who may or may not know about the business, but all they know is that, okay, I'm getting a fantastic yield out of my money and I'm happy with it. So that was the motivation.
Which honestly is so much of crypto now is fintech. I think that is like what people need to know. Like people need to know it's a trustworthy product and that they're getting some sort of, yield or returns on it and like what that is. I think
Yeah,
beyond that, I think you guys were so ahead of the curve on this. Like you were always about kind of hiding the complexity and just like keeping it simple for the end user.
yeah.
And I think that shows in not only your product, but the marketing. I know both you and Doc think a lot about this. Like everything with how we've seen Decharge's evolution has been very pain point centric first and what the impact is. And that's it. And I think that's what you
Yeah,
need.
yeah,
Very cool.
absolutely. To add to that, we always kept telling people that this is the deepen, and especially something like this is the best product for a bear market. We always say that we are a bear market product. Bull market anyway we are a winner, but bear market winners are very rare, because look at what's happening now. But our business is actually increasing while this is happening, because people won't stop traveling, people won't stop moving, people, the goods need to go on time. So all of these companies that are with us are charging more, they are doing more deliveries because people are buying more for whatever reason. So this is great. So this is, regardless of what happens, people won't stop traveling, people won't stop charging their cars. So we are always on layer. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, just having a front row seat to all your progress has been awesome over the years, and we're very excited about kind of what this next stage of your roadmap will look like. So maybe to round things out, can you fill us in on what's next in terms of the Decharge roadmap and what do you guys have in store in terms of the mainnet launch and how you're thinking about growing the network in the next 18 months?
Oh yeah, it's a big question to answer. So we have some very exciting partnerships lined up. Hopefully the PR goes out well. We've cracked a very exciting opportunity, something that is going to be defining for the deep in space. We will very soon let you guys know. We are in the final stages of rounding that up, and it is a big deal for the entire, not just the deepen ecosystem, but actually the crypto ecosystem, because it kind of tying real world to what we're doing. It's big. It's quite big. Moving forward, what we want to do is we are kind of moving towards becoming an aggregator, and the layer, we're now at a place where it's an autopilot. So we have hosts coming in. We have other charge point operators who have, let's say, 100 or 200 chargers coming in wanting to be a part of the protocol, because they're getting access to deepen financing, they're getting access to the ecosystem that we bring and the users. So it's a win-win by doing a small revenue share. So what we have started doing now is we've expanded our network from 1,000 chargers. Now we're at about 4,000x across, where the partners are, we are getting the partners at a discounted rate, like a, think of us as a virtual fleet. So we are becoming the virtual fleet and getting usage on their charges at a discounted rate, because fleet prices are different to retail prices. But then we are driving a lot of traffic to them. So the entire ecosystem, the decharge ecosystem, makes a margin out of every transaction that happens on every partner's charging system, charged anywhere in the world. And to enable that, it's good for the chargers, charging companies also, the partners also, because the underutilized time is not there anymore, then we are driving traffic to them. So it's very symbiotic in nature. While all of this happening, we are building the intelligence layer for infra, because now with the advent of machine economy and machine to machine transactions, and again the wallet becomes a key part of all of this, we are also building this entire intelligence, because currently in the world, except for Tesla, no other automobile company in the world has knowledge or intelligence about autonomous
Really?
energy.
Huh. I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah. So we are building this entire framework for training for autonomous vehicles, whether it is a car, whether it's a robot, whether it's a drone. So we are using the network of chargers, understanding battery telemetry, understanding usage, getting the metrics, and then building the intelligence layer that nobody else has. So we are kind of building towards the autonomous economy, because now you see the Tesla auto, the Tesla has already launched robo taxis, right? It's not far before others do it as well, and they
Okay.
need charging. We're preparing for that. We're very ahead
Travis
of the curve.
Conk's new company as
Yeah.
well.
When we think about charging, we only think cars, but no, it's not that. We have EV tolls, we have robots, we have drones. All of these need charging, and they're all electric. So we're building that ecosystem for that. So we're heading in that direction, working with a lot of companies as well. And on the mainnet launch, we are already very ahead of that. We are working with some very top companies, some announcements coming soon. And yeah, all I can say is that people who are a part of the network, who has been supporting us since the early days, are, we want them to win big, big, big time. We are very focused on this. We've been doing this for years now. We're committed to this. We're going long, and
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
very soon.
And it's cool that you're kind of moving in this like autonomous drone telemetry style trajectory, given that both you and Doc have backgrounds in that space, right? Is that
Yes,
accurate?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
cool. Yeah, I mean it makes a ton of sense.
There's a robo taxi that goes and drops somebody 80 miles out, right? But then it's out of charge. What happens? Will you, as the owner of the car, drive 80 miles to charge it? No, right? So it has to find a way to charge itself. So, but what about the charging itself? But the charger doesn't, if the charger is manned, it doesn't have, because if you're looking at a large scale, you can't man every charger, so it needs to be unmanned. So the how do they trust each other? When the charger goes and plugs into the car, they have to be trustless. So it has to be on chain, where the car can trust the charger and the charger can trust the car, and the transaction happens between the charger and the car. So now the host, that the people who are deploying decharge chargers, will be deploying autonomous chargers. They just get paid whenever there's a car that comes in. So that's where the future is. That's where the money is.
Yeah. And I mean, we're seeing a lot of teams also do kind of machine to machine payments now with things like X402 enabled APIs and via things like our REST API that's becoming a popular product as well. So just seeing that play out on the agentic side, I think it makes sense that now, you will need this like trustless mechanism for machines to pay each other, and like how does that get facilitated? So very cool, and congrats on all the progress. And we need to do a part two, clearly, when deeper into the year, once some of these items have been launched on your roadmap. But thank you so much for joining, Mohan. I know it's late your time, but I always appreciate having folks like you on the show. So thank you.
No, no, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Aditya. I'm sorry about the lags and all that, but
It's okay.
as always, it's really happy chatting with you guys, and it's thrilled to be working with Para. I think it's an amazing product, and it's really solved some really tough problems that we did not have to go into. So kudos to the entire team, and I think we are going to do a lot together.
Hell yeah. Love it.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you.
thanks a lot for having me.